In this presentation, we will look into the creation of a purchase order within QuickBooks Online. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars file. We will be entering a purchase order. So let's first think of that objective of the purchase order, and then we will go in and do the creation of it and the setup for the purchase order process. Note that the purchase order is not something that every business will have. Many small businesses may not do the standard purchase order process. When thinking about the purchase order, if we select this plus item at the top, we're considering the vendors section at the top, the vendor process, the purchasing process. And typically in the purchasing process for a large company, we would have a purchase order first. And the thing that's different about a purchase order than we might think if we were to purchase something individually or for a small company is that if we were to purchase something, say individually, say if we were to purchase something online at Amazon.com or some online retailer, we make the payment at the point of purchase, even though we have not yet received the inventory. We typically make the payment, they then ship the inventory, we get it. If we're a large retailer, however, it may be reversed, meaning we might have more authority, we might have more power. We may have the power to say, we would like you to ship us the inventory. We're just going to request that you ship it. Once we get it, we're going to check it. We're going to see if it's in accordance with what we want, and then we'll pay you at that point in time. And that's the process. That's the difference with a purchase order. So a purchase order then typically is for larger companies that are able to request the inventory before payment, have the inventory shipped to them before they make the payment. So if that's the case, then the purchase order actually has no journal entry related to it, no transaction, no accounts affected. Strange that. That's going to be unusual. Any other area that you see that we're going to create a form, almost all of them have some type of transaction, 2 accounts affected. The purchase order only informational. Keep that in mind. Important to note, it is an exception to the general rule of a transaction being in place. What's happening then is all we're saying, it's just a request. We're giving the purchase order to our vendor. If we're purchasing a guitar from Gibson, we're sending them the purchase order. We're saying, hey, we would like 5 guitars from you. Please give us these guitars. Upon receipt of them, we'll see if they're in accordance with what we've ordered. And then give us the bill, we'll enter the bill and make the payment upon receipt. Therefore, at the time of the purchase order, we haven't made a payment, so there's no financial transaction, and we haven't received anything. The inventory is not ours, it's not in our possession, we don't have any claim to it. Therefore, we don't record inventory, no financial transaction. So that's what we're going to do. That's the goal. It's just a requesting document. Why is it important? Because obviously it's a request, and we'll connect it then to the bill. Once we get the guitars along with the bill, we'll enter the bill and we'll be able to tie those together to the purchase order to see that we received what we ordered, and then we can pay the bill, record the inventory at the point in time we receive the inventory. In order to track this purchase order, let's first take a look at the settings in the cog. So we're going to go to this cog up top so that we can look at our company settings. So we'll go to the cog up top. We want to go to the accountant and settings. And we want to take a look at one of the settings in order to track our purchase orders. It's going to be in the expenses area. This is something we may have to change as we do here. We're going to have this track expenses and items by customer. We want to change that to on. So it's off currently as the defaults currently are. I'm going to select this item. We're going to change it to on by selecting this check mark and then save. So make sure to do that if you're following along with this problem. We'll then close this back out. The reason we wanted to do that, by the way, is it allows us to add a customer field into the purchase order. So in other words, if we had a custom guitar that we're going to make, that we're going to buy from the vendor, it allows us to then apply that custom guitar for the particular person, the customer that we have the particular purchase order for. Otherwise, the purchase order is not going to assign who the guitar is for. This will make more sense as we start to create purchase orders. Let's create the purchase order up top now. We're going to go to the plus item to create the purchase order. We are in the vendors. We're going to go to a purchase order, and we're going to create a purchase order from Epiphone. So Epiphone is our guitar vendor who we buy our guitars from, which we then sell in our store. So we're going to sell the Epiphone guitars, which we buy from Epiphone, who is the vendor. So if we select the dropdown, we're going to have the vendors here typically. So here's our vendors. We want Epiphone. We can also type it up top and it will autofill for us. That's what we want. If we wanted to email, we can put the email here and we can email the purchase order, which is nice and convenient. We've got the mailing address, which is drawn from what we have in the system so far. That's just what we're going to keep. We've got the ship to address, and this is going to be the address. It's going to be our address. That's where we want it to go. If we want some other address, if we have some warehouse where we ship this information to before it goes to the store or something like that, we can have a different address here. We're going to have the purchase order date. I'm going to say plus to go to 12. I'm setting a plus, and that increases the date to January 12th, 2019. And then we got the ship via. We're not going to put anything in the ship via. We're going to then scroll down to the details. Typically, note we're going to be in the items detail, not the account detail. Account detail would be us recording something to an account. We're here in the items, inventory items. That's what we're buying, inventory items. We're going to say that we're going to buy an Epiphone, so it's an ELP. So if we select this drop down, we're going to sell that. We're buying this inventory item, which we will later sell. So we're going to buy this ELP. The description then pulls up for us. This is coming straight from our item lists. So when we set up our products and services, pulls over for us, helps with the invoice as well as here, this being the purchase order. We're going to say that we're going to buy one of them. The rate is 400, the amount is 400, and we're going to assign the customer. This is the field that we set up when we changed that setting at the beginning. This would be the case if we're in the type of industry, say, that we often have custom orders. So in our case, maybe we have ELPs in the store. Maybe someone came in and said, hey, I like that ELP. I would like it, but I'd like it in green or something like that. We don't have one in green. Well, then we can make a custom order to our vendor for that particular customer, making a particular custom order for them. And that's what we're doing here. So we're going to make that custom order, and therefore we can apply it to a particular customer. And that will help us to match up this purchase order and help us to flow through the information all the way through the creation of the invoice so that we can say, oh yeah, we got that purchase order for this particular customer. We can call them and say, hey, you know, your particular purchase order, your guitar is here. And then we can apply that out and give them the guitar, tie all that out. So we're going to put the customer field. We're going to call it Eric Music. So we're just going to make up a new customer. And I usually make a new customer by typing it in first and then adding it from there. So if I say tab, it's going to say I want to add. We may want to add the details when you're doing something like this. So notice we have the minimal amount, the name to add, which we're going to use. But with customers, you often want the detail, of course, and add as much customer information you can, including phone number, mobile, website, contact information. Why? Because we want to send them our newsletter and all that kind of stuff. So QuickBooks is the place where you can do that. The minimal amount of information for the customer field, of course, is just the customer name. That's what we'll keep here so that we can track the process of entering this information into the system. So we're going to say Eric Music, once again, tab, and I'm just going to say save. So we're going to say save, and there it is. Note that now we have it, and this is going to be the purchase price, not the sales price. We're going to sell it for more when we create the invoice. We could have your messages here, any memos here that we could enter into the system, and then we can save it on the right, and we can print it. So I'm going to go ahead and print this. So we're going to print it. Here it is. So here's the preview of the purchase order. Then I'm going to go back up top and go to the printer. And it's going to print it as a PDF file again because we're using that cute PDF printer. So I'm going to print this, the purchase order. We're going to save it. I'm going to put it back on the desktop. Going to put it into that GGG file. So we're looking for GGG. And I'm going to say this is section 7. So I'm going to add a new folder. So we're going to say new folder. And I'm going to call this section 7. Section 7. And go into that. And then we'll change this to the purchase order. I'm just going to call it PO. We'll say it's Epiphone, and we'll say the date. The date of this is going to be 01/12/19. And so we'll save that, and that will be printed. Closing this back out. We can also save it down here, and of course we can email it up top. So now I'm going to go down and say save and close. Remember once again that there's not going to be any journal entry related to this, but we can see the purchase orders if we go to the expenses on the left side. Remember, it's part of the expense cycle, the purchasing cycle, and then we go to the expenses tab up top. Then we could see this information and we could sort by, we could filter by, if we so choose, the purchase order. We could say the type of transaction we're looking is the purchase order. So if we have a lot of them, we could filter this and look, there's our purchase order. If we want to send it from here or some other action, we can do so. If we want to open this back up, we can select it and then go back into our purchase order. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.